ba yung katabi mo? They say that there are only two types of generations in this world. The first type of generation, they are called the young generation. If you're part of the young generation, raise your hands and make some noise. Woohoo! Totoo ba yan? But the second generation, they're called the younger generation. If you're part of the younger generation, make some noise. Ayan, hindi na nagtaas ng kamay yung iba. No, but seriously, it's very interesting that all of us have this want to be young, again. But they say age is just a number. Do you agree? It's not about the wrinkles on your face. It's not about the number you have in your years. But interestingly, what do you think? I want to tell you first, what separates a young person from an old person? You want to know what? A young person, whether or not you are 8 years old or 8 years old, what separates a young person from an old person is that a young person has the courage to dream. A young person has the courage to say yes to whatever scary thing is out there. A young person has this capacity to ask questions and pursue those questions. Do you agree with that? You know, and now today I want to share with you that what is stopping us from dreaming big. When you were young, you remember when you were asked, what do you want to become? You would answer what? I want to become a pilot, a doctor, an astronaut. And then what do your parents say? Hindi pwede, mahirap lang tayo. Diba? Parang binabara tayo. But look at the young people in your lives. They are they're big dreamers, yes? What stops us from dreaming big? You want to know what? Hurts, traumas, bad experiences. I want to tell you one bad experience that I had when I was very young, about first year high school. I had a crush. Her name was Christine. And Christine was very beautiful. And there was one time, me together with my brothers, we were with our group of friends. We played a game called Truth or Consequence. Nandun yung mga kapatid ko, nandun si Christine. And the bottle turned and the bottle stopped in front of my brother. And they asked him, truth or consequence? And he said, truth. And the first question was, sinong crush mo? At hindi ko makakalimutan. Sinabi ng kapatid ko, nakatingin siya dun sa babae. Gusto ko, sabi niya, si Christine. Oh my God! Sakit! And it was so terrible that when the bottle turned again and stopped in front of me, they asked me, hindi mo man lang tinanong kung truth or consequence. Tinanong ko, sinong crush mo? Sobrang ayoko masaktan yung kapatid ko, ayoko mapahiya siya, ayoko mahirapan si Christine sa aming dalawa. So, nagbanggit ako ng ibang pangalan ng babae. Pero sakit. Ang hirap nun, ano, kapag meron kang mahal, tapos hindi mo masabing mahal mo siya. No, but seriously, this is true. When you go through hurtful experiences, you tend to crawl back into your comfort zone, yes? Raise your hand if you've been hurt before. I'm sure you've been hurt before. If the person beside you didn't raise his or her hand, smack him on the shoulder. Masaktan niya, dapat masaktan niya. Para patas tayong lahat. Joke lang. And because we are all hurt, then all of us have cowered inside our comfort zone. So how can we get this youthful zeal back? I propose 3 ways. It all starts with the letter Q. Number 1, you have to keep on asking questions. Number 2, you have to keep quiet. And number 3, you have to commit to your quest. 3 ways of how to regain your youthful zeal. Number 1, let's talk about questions. All right? Questions in terms of what will happen if I have a 4-year-old niece. Actually, when she was 4 years old, she was very inquisitive. And she would always ask questions up to the point that we would be very irritated with her questions. But that's her nature, so we let her ask questions. And funny, because I also have a grandfather, my lolo. He's about 82 years old already. And just 2 weeks ago, he came up to me with his iPad and he asked me a question. You know what his question was? Migoy, paano ba tong Facebook na to? Kasi accidentally, he created 3 Facebook accounts. Sabi ko, whoa, ikaw na, iba-ibang friends, kada Facebook account. So I had to teach him. But it's very interesting that in my life, I have a 4-year-old, I have an 82-year-old, who both, for me, are very young. Why? Because they have the capacity to ask questions. I'll ask you a question. I have an optical illusion here on screen. Have you seen this optical illusion before? How many are familiar with this? Probably for some. All right, and I want to ask you, which line is longer? First of all, raise your hand if you think it's letter A. Raise your hand if you think it's letter B. How many of you think that they are of the same length? Raise your hand. Wow. How many of you say that, I will measure it first before I answer. Meron ba? Okay. All right, but I will tell you the answer. I'm looking at the yellow lines. Let's remove the white lines, right? Look at that. What's longer? Let's put them together. B is longer. So congratulations if you answered B. There you go. But I also want to congratulate that last group of people who said, wait, I will measure it first before I answer. May nagtaas ba ng kamay? Hindi, tinawanan niyo sila eh. But that is exactly what inquisitiveness is. It is not making judgments beforehand. It is, wait a minute, can I check? I want to learn more. I want to see how we do things. Can we revisit our old practices so that we can do things better? How many times in our offices do we say, hindi, alam ko na yan? How many times in our families do we say, hindi, sanay na ako dyan? Don't assume. Ask if you need to ask. Just like a young person would do. Hawakan ang kamay ng katabi and tell that person, ask a question. I hope I can answer it. Always have that hunger for discovery. And I want to tell you a story about somebody. His name is Jonathan. And he's from the Bible. He has a sidekick, his armor bearer. And in that time, this story happens during the Israelites' battle against the Philistines. The Philistines were so many, they were so skilled in warrior. And here you have the Israelites, headed by their king, King Saul. King Saul was a very proud man. He wouldn't want to listen to anyone, including his son. His son was Jonathan. And here is the story. One day, Jonathan, son of Saul, said to his young armor bearer, come, let's go over to the Philistine outpost on the other side. But Jonathan did not tell his father. How many of you have done silly things and you have not told your parents? Diba? You have done something like that. And then Jonathan said, perhaps, can you say that word? Perhaps. Perhaps the Lord will act on our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few, Jonathan said. We think that Jonathan is crazy because they're just 2. But who is crazier? The armor bearer. Look at what he said. Do all that you have in mind, his armor bearer said. Go ahead, I am with you, heart and soul. May mga kaibigan ba kayong ganon? Mangungopya ka, sabihin niya, go ahead! Weird, no? But that's what the armor bearer said, di ba? He rode on to the perhaps of Jonathan. Jonathan wasn't sure. They were just 2, and there were 600 Philistines. But Jonathan said, what if we go up there? Perhaps the Lord will save us. What if? And then, that question led him to the second point that I'm going to make. Led him to quiet. And that's number 2, quiet. Let's continue the story. Jonathan said, come on then. We will cross over toward them and let them see us. If, say that word again, if, this is their moment of quiet. If they say to us, wait there until we come to you, we will stay where we are and not go up to them. But if they say, come up to us, we will climb up, because that will be our sign that the Lord has given them into our hands. So both of them showed themselves to the Philistine outpost. Imagine their terror, just the 2 of them. And by the way, notice that who was Jonathan with? His armor bearer. Did the armor bearer have his own armor? Whose armor was he carrying?
Jonathan's armor. So obviously, they were just 2 people versus 600, and they only had 1 set of armor. Because the armor bearer was carrying Jonathan's armor. Crazy. Alright, but then, when they went up, look at what the Philistines said. Look! The Hebrews are crawling out of the holes they were hiding in. The men of the outposts shouted to Jonathan and his armor bearer, come up to us, and we will teach you a lesson. So Jonathan said to his armor bearer, look at the confidence here. Climb up after me. The Lord has given them into the hands of Israel. Notice this. Jonathan had a question. But then he sat down. Wait a minute. What will happen? Let's do this. If this doesn't work, let's do this. That small moment of quiet is very important. That's when you think about where God is leading you. But here's a funny thing. When we go into that quiet, that becomes our comfort zone as well. And we have analysis paralysis. I'm sure that has happened to you. Yeah? But Jonathan didn't. He sat for a while and then he just said, let's go, let's do this. A lot of us can't do this because we have so many issues in terms of trust. Oh my gosh. Grabe yung ang dami ng tao may issues of trust. Let me give you an illustration. For example, how many of you have been to Cubao? Raise your hands. Cubao, Quezon City, yes? How many of you have commuted to Cubao? Right, thank you, alright. Notice, when you're going to commute to Cubao, where are you going? You're going to go to the terminal of the jeep that will say Cubao, yes? So on top of the terminal, that there will be a sign, and the sign will say Cubao. And then under the sign, there will be a jeep. In front of the jeep, there will be a sign. The sign will say Cubao. And then on the side of the jeep, it will say Cubao. And you notice there's a barker at the back of the jeep shouting Cubao, Cubao, Cubao. And what do? We go to the terminal, we see the sign, we see the jeep, we see the sign again, we see the sign at the back, we hear the barker, Cubao, Cubao, Cubao. And what do we ask? Manong, Cubao? Oh my gosh. We have so many issues on trust, and we find it hard to trust people already. We find it hard to trust circumstances already. We find it hard to trust even ourselves. But here is what Jonathan did. Jonathan wasn't paralyzed by his fear. He was pushed by his faith. He was not stuck where he was. Pero sabi niya, I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm afraid, I'm scared, but let's do this. Does that make sense? Is that terrifying? Oh yes, it is. But then, that led Jonathan to my third point, my final point, which is quest. Once you have a question in your mind, you're wondering, what if I start this business? What if I start exercising already? Iba sa atin, tanong pa rin hanggang ngayon, mga 10 years na. What if I start telling my brother, telling my sister that I love them? Then you go into quiet. And then God says, do it. And then the third step is go and commit to your quest. And so, here's the ending of the story. Jonathan climbed up, using his hands and feet with his armor bearer right behind him. The Philistines fell before Jonathan. Yun na yung action movie doon. They just did it. And his armor bearer followed and killed behind him. Where did the armor bearer get his sword? From those Jonathan already defeated. So he got the swords. Alright? In that first attack, Jonathan and his armor bearer killed some 20 men in an area of about half an acre. Just with a perhaps in his mind, just with that faith in his heart, he killed 20 men in about half an acre. And then panic struck the whole army. Those in the camp and the field, and those in the outposts and waiting parties, and the ground shook. It was a panic sent by God. And when all the Israelites who had hidden in the hill country of Ephraim heard that the Philistines were on the run, they joined the battle in hot pursuit. So on that day, the Lord saved Israel, and the battle moved on beyond Beth-aven. Only with 2 people who had a question, who had a piece of quiet, and who committed to their quest, the whole army of Israel pushed and defeated the Philistine army.